All right. Diving in today, we're looking at material storage and handling, how things move and where they sit in the workplace.
Yeah.
Got some really interesting resources you sent over.
Yeah.
And our mission here is, I guess, how can we make that flow better,
Right.
keep things safer and really boost how efficient a workplace can be.
Yeah.
And one thing that really jumped out at me right away is how it seems like a lot of the biggest wins come from, well, surprisingly simple changes, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. So many times, when we think about workplace problems, slowdowns or even safety issues,
Right.
It's easy to jump to, oh, we need some fancy new equipment. But often it boils down to, how things are laid out. And, are we working with the space? Are we working with how people actually move and use things?
Right.
And so, yeah, these are very practical ergonomic tweaks we're talking about.
Okay.
Changes that really fit the job to the worker and honestly can make a huge difference, not just to the bottom line, but to, keeping your team healthy and safe.
So let's break it down, starting with something that might seem obvious at first.
Okay.
These clear transport routes, having defined pathways for stuff to move. Your material's really hammered on how vital that is.
Yeah.
Why is that so important?
Well, think about it this way. If you don't have those defined routes, those marked pathways, you create this kind of ambiguity. It's both visual and operational. The materials you sent, they talk about these routes as soft constraints, right?
Right.
They're kind of subtly guiding people, they're guiding equipment, and that reduces the amount of thinking someone has to do
Oh,
to
interesting.
navigate that space. And it helps to prevent that clutter buildup, misplaced things, and of course those, slips and trips that can happen all too easily.
Oh,
And of course, if there's ever an emergency, having those clear routes marked,
right.
that becomes even more critical for a safe and, quick evacuation.
So it's more than just like aesthetics, having things look nice and tidy.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's about safety, efficiency.
Yeah.
And the recommendation that came through in the materials is to really think it through. What are the essential flows of materials?
Okay.
Involve the people who are actually doing the work in figuring that out. Map those key routes.
Right.
And then once you've got them, make them clear.
Yeah.
Use floor markings, tape, paint, whatever works. And even think about physical barriers,
Okay.
like fences near machinery, stored items.
Oh, I see.
And of course, one of the biggest things is making sure that everyone has what they need to keep those routes clear.
Oh, right.
So accessible storage, racks, shelves, and clear designated areas for waste disposal.
That makes a lot of sense. Now let's build on those clear routes.
Okay.
We've got this concept of wide aisles and corridors. And again, it might seem obvious, but why is having enough space so important?
Well, think about it. Narrow aisles, those are bottlenecks.
Yeah.
Your material's really stressed that having enough space for two-way movement,
Okay.
that's got to be the bare minimum. Imagine the frustration of trying to, squeeze past someone with a loaded cart.
Right.
Or having to, constantly maneuver around obstacles. It's a time suck, and it's a safety hazard, really.
Yeah.
Adequate space dramatically cuts down on the risk of collisions, especially if you're using, mobile racks or push carts.
Right. And I think the materials you sent over had some specific dimensions in mind for all this.
They did, yeah. For two-way traffic, they were suggesting around 125 to 140 centimeters.
Okay.
Which is often enough to accommodate, a standard pallet jack with a little safety margin. And then for smaller passageways, those less frequently used spots, around 75 centimeters.
Okay.
But the idea is be proactive. Clear out the obstructions, mark those aisles clearly.
Right.
And if you are really tight on space, think about maybe using smaller, easier to carry containers, things like that.
Right.
Sometimes even just rearranging equipment a bit can open up a lot of space and make things flow much better.
All right. So we've got clearly marked paths, plenty of room to move.
Right.
Now, what about what's underfoot?
Ah, yes.
Even non-slippery surfaces.
Right.
And again, this sounds incredibly basic, but your materials really highlighted this. Why is that?
Well, because uneven or slippery floors, they're a really common cause of workplace accidents. And we're talking everything from, slips and trips to more serious strains, injuries, back problems, you name it.
Yeah.
And, think about the strain of pushing a loaded cart over an uneven surface.
Right, right.
It's much harder than it needs to be.
Yeah.
The materials, they really emphasize that having a smooth, stable surface,
Yeah.
it's so fundamental for efficiency. And it just reduces that unnecessary wear and tear on people's bodies.
Yeah. So what are some practical steps to address this?
Well, it's about getting rid of those tripping hazards, anything that creates an uneven surface. So addressing any changes in floor height, being really proactive about preventing spills, to having clear cleaning procedures in place, absorbent materials on hand, covered containers for liquids, all that good stuff.
Right.
And then, of course, if you do have some unavoidable unevenness, maybe use ramps, temporary fixes to smooth things out. And it's funny, one of the simplest and most cost-effective solutions they highlighted is just having a regular daily cleaning schedule.
Oh, wow.
I mean, you wouldn't believe how many problems that can prevent.
Yeah.
Just keeping things clean and tidy.
It's amazing how these things we've talked about, they seem so simple, right?
Right.
Clear routes, wide aisles, even surfaces. It's
Yes.
like they really are the foundation of a safer, more efficient workplace.
And what's interesting is how interconnected they all are. You can't really have efficient flow without those clear routes.
Right.
And those routes, they're going to be much safer, much more practical.
Right.
When you have ample space and reliable surfaces. It's all part of a holistic approach. Each element supports the others.
So for everyone listening out there, hopefully this deep dive has shown that making real improvements in your workspace, or honestly anywhere that needs to function smoothly, it doesn't always have to be about complex solutions.
Right.
Sometimes it's about getting those fundamentals right.
Yeah, and it makes me think, about how we can apply these basic principles beyond the workplace.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, where else in your life could you benefit from clearer pathways, more space, more stable, reliable surfaces? What transport routes in your own home or in your own personal projects
Right.
could you optimize for better flow and, frankly, less frustration?
That's a great question. Something to think about. Well, thanks for diving into this with me.
My pleasure.
Until our next deep dive.
Sounds good.